Thank you Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Well, welcome folks to another video, and also welcome to my new studio. For argument's sake anyway, I'll call it a studio, but in reality it's a bedroom in our new house. And as you can see, I have some work to do. The cupboards in the background there, I'm still painting, so they're missing the doors. And there's also a glass panel that'll be going up behind me. It's magnetic, so I can hang large prints and look at them in decent light. So I'm really excited about that. The sound also has a lot of echo in here, so I need to address that. And as time goes by, I'll slowly get the space up and running for the videos I film indoors. The one great thing is now that I have way more room to move around. Now last week I put out a video on controlling contrast and color to create depth. And unfortunately that video didn't go over so well. It's been one of my least viewed videos ever. It's unfortunate because I believe it has some beneficial information in it to consider when processing. The good news is that for those of you that did watch it, I think it really resonated with you and helped you out a lot. So I appreciate that. With that in mind though, I've decided to continue with these videos because it's something that I really wanted to put together, something a little bit different than what you find in other videos on YouTube, and hopefully it'll help some of my viewers with their own processing. Processing can be a bit daunting for some of us, but unfortunately it's an integral part of photography. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be complicated. And there are so many videos on YouTube about processing that just are convoluted and just overdo it with the processing. And I'm a true believer that it really doesn't have to be that complicated. So let's get stuck into a couple more photographs and see if we can improve or mess them up. Okay, now this image here was one that I took just before I went on my trip to Africa at a local waterfall in Vancouver. And the light wasn't actually that great, but the photograph turned out better than I thought it would, mainly because the light was very contrasty. But again, I can't believe how much dynamic range the medium format camera has, so I underestimated that contrast. And even though it is contrasty, it was able to maintain detail pretty much throughout the whole photograph, except for perhaps the very bottom here. What I liked about this scene, though, was the contrast between the warm and cool colors again. You'll notice that in the background, in the corner here, because it's in the shade, it's just reflecting ambient light from the sky. So you get that blue cast, and then we have the direct sunlight hitting the waterfall, which is a much warmer tone. Now, as much as I like this scene, there are a few problems with it. First of all, the shrub on the side here was unavoidable, but I took the photograph anyway, figuring out that I could clone it out. But if you watched last week's video with the remove tool, I think it'll do a great job of removing that and filling in that background nicely. The other problem with this is I've already addressed the overexposure at the bottom. We might have to use some content aware in there as well. And this section here is quite bright. It'd be great to have more attention on this section here. So let's see what we can do with this photograph. Now, right now I have it opened up in Camera Raw. So we'll just do a few quick edits in Camera Raw. First off, I'm just going to open up the shadows a little bit, mainly for the background here. The blacks, hold down the Option Alt key, and let's see where the blacks are. So we'll bring the blacks down a little bit, right to the edge. The whites will leave for now because I think I'm going to do those in Lightroom. I like the filters better in Lightroom. As long as there's a little bit of detail in here. So let's see. It looks, let's bring the highlights down and the whites just to make sure we've got those details. You'll notice we've lost some in here. but that's okay. Okay, so we've opened up the file in Photoshop, and let's give this a go with the content aware. We'll do it in small sections like I did last week, just to make sure that it generative fill, generate. Okay, I won't go through this whole thing with you because I've already put out a video. I think you get a good idea. If you haven't seen the video, I'll leave a link up in the corner here. Okay, it took me all of 5 minutes to remove the shrub, and as you can see on the image on the right side, it did a pretty nice job at content aware. I also got rid of that bright spot by just using content aware on those two little sections as well. So a great tool once again, and if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link up in the corner here. Right, what I'd like to do is just make a few adjustments so that we're bringing more attention to the central portion of the image. This bit here is still quite bright. So all I'm going to do here is just grab a linear gradient and just whack that right across the corner there and bring down the whites and the highlights. And we can adjust that if it doesn't quite suit our needs. Actually, let's zoom out a little bit here. Something like that would be fine. And then I'm going to grab another linear gradient and do the same thing, except just on the very corner here. Bring down the whites and the highlights. Something like that. Looks great. And all I want to do now is just bring more attention to this section here. So the way to do that would be to brighten it up as much as I can. So I'll grab another filter. Let's try the radial filter. Just bring it on this central portion here. And let's bring up those whites. Just bring that in a bit. That's the nice thing about these filters. You can just move them around so easily. So if there's one section you don't want brightened up, it's very easy to just move it. There we go, something like that. There we go. That's starting to look really good already. And that is pretty much it. We can check the blacks again. So hold down the Option Alt. Makes some very slight adjustments. The whites. You'll notice now that when we bring the whites up, the central portion gets blown out quicker than the edges. So that's what I want to see, because that's the part that is the brightest in the frame, right in the center there, right around here. And I might bring up the shadows just ever so slightly. Something like that. And there we go. As I mentioned, the reason why I really like this photograph, again, is because of the contrast between the cooler tones and the warmer tones. And I think that's what really pulls this image together. I'd like to just take a moment to express my gratitude to Squarespace for sponsoring my latest video and supporting my channel. One of the features that I really appreciate the most about my Squarespace website is the ease with which I can update galleries and pages both from my desktop computer and through the Squarespace app on my smartphone. This allows me to edit my website quickly and elegantly without needing to have any coding knowledge. If this sounds appealing to you, I encourage you to visit squarespace.com and give it a try for free. If you decide to make a purchase, don't forget to use the code AdamGibbs for a 10% discount on your first order. Okay, now this photograph here, there are a number of things about it that I really like. I love the door in the background there. You'll notice that it's the brightest spot in the whole photograph. And again, we're working with warm and cool colors, contrasts. But there are a few issues with this scene, primarily in brightness and dark areas. One of the issues that I have with this, and I have this with architectural photography in general, is that I don't like it when verticals are not vertical. Now, I tried quite hard to try and get as vertical as possible. Got this side vertical, but not this side. Also, you'll notice that it's quite bright in this section here and around here. So I'm going to darken that up, cool this down, because overall it does have a cooler tone to it, and warm this section up here, perhaps brighten the light down here, and brighten up this cupboard a little bit as well to draw you in. So with all of that in mind, first thing I want to do is just straighten up that doorway a little bit. We can try it automatically, see how that does. And as you can see, just by using the auto or vertical in the transform, it does a really great job of making those verticals vertical. You may notice that at the very top of my panel here, which you can customize, I have lens corrections. And that's usually the first thing that I do with all my images. Just enable profile corrections and remove chromatic aberration. So if there's any issues, then that will instantly get rid of that. Then I have my basic panel, which I use a lot. And then we have the tone curve. HSL I use, but not that often. Detail I very rarely use. Transform, as I just showed you. And calibration very rarely. So there's only really a couple of panels that I use: the lens corrections, basic, and tone curve, and also the masks here. So what I'm going to do is first grab a mask, grab a brush, and like I said, I want to darken this section here. So I'm going to feather this quite a bit, keep the flow around 70 there. And I'm just going to turn the auto mask off. I'm just going to paint this section here really loosely. We can always adjust a lot of this after the fact if there's certain areas that we don't like. And again, I'm just going to start by bringing the whites down, the highlights, and also just a tad of the exposure. And you'll notice that already we've brought more attention by just doing that, by darkening that area, more attention to the door in the background. Now the next section is I want to make another mask. Again, this is going to be a brush. Reduce the feathering on this one, reduce the size a little bit, and I'm just going to paint around this section here and around the top, around here, all through this section here. Doesn't have to be terribly accurate. We can always adjust it afterwards if there's issues with the photograph. Something like that. And all I'm going to do with this section, actually let's just turn that auto mask on, and we'll just do the edge of the doorway there as well. Like that. Okay, now this section, all I'm going to do here is just cool it down ever so slightly. Remember, this is all about trying to be as subtle as possible. Okay, we've done that. Now I'm going to grab that mask, duplicate and invert it, and just going to get rid of some of the upper, some of these bits that we've missed around here. That was probably because I had the opacity at 70. That's fine. Oh, turn the auto mask off. That might help. There we go. Doesn't matter if some of this overlaps. Okay, and then with this section, I'm just going to warm it up. Again, ever so slightly, like so. Now, I mentioned that I'd really like to brighten this up a little bit, this cupboard here that's leaning over, but I don't want to brighten it up any more than the doorway. The doorway is the center of attention. So again, let's grab another brush, turn the auto mask on, reduce the size. Let's just bring this up a little bit. And we're just going to paint. Let's bring the flow up. Let's paint this cupboard here. Like so. And if you overlap, you can always just press the Option Alt key, just reduce the size, and you can delete or erase. If you've gone over too far, you can erase some of that section. Bring the flow up. Like so. And again, once we've got the mask, we're just going to bring up the whites, maybe the highlights, like so. And then lastly, again, another quick mask, brush. I'm just going to brighten up this area in here. So let's turn auto mask off, feather this a little bit. I'm not going to brighten up the door anymore because I think that's probably bright enough. And just bring up the whites. Whites and highlights, those are the ones I use the most. And let's try and warm it up even more. There we go. And that is it. That is a pretty complex edit for me. And as you'll see, that it didn't take that long. It took maybe 5-10 minutes. Of course, there might be some other little adjustments that I might want to make, but I think you get a good idea of what I'm after here. That lovely contrast between the warm and cool colors, and also drawing your viewer into the frame. Well, thanks guys for following along and continuing to support my channel. I hope you got something out of this video, and if you did, please be sure to give me the old thumbs up. As always, if you'd like to support my channel in other ways, I have a Patreon page, my website. I have a number of items for sale, including workshops. The workshops for Vancouver Island are starting to fill up. So if you are thinking about it, now might be the time to sign up. I think one of them, we only have 2 spots left. So go check that out, adamgibbs.com. All right, until next week, bye-bye.